Want to like put some tape on it and like clip it to it.
Testing.
This old man talked to us today.
Testing.
That and then how the fuck did he do that? Oh, like that.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to see so many young, engaged faces. And I mean that sincerely. I see a lot of young people. All right. Well, I just want to thank you guys for bringing yourselves out. Of course, the most important thing we can do is be engaged and be informed. So it's great to have these people who will also come to you and answer your questions. With that being said, I would love to just thank you for being at this forum with the wonderful DEC helping us put this on today. So I just want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to the DEC. Woo! And of course, I want to thank the man of the hour as well, Mr. David Jolly, who is running to be your next governor here in the state of Florida. So with that being said, I would love to start off by allowing Jackie. Jackie Sentner is our chair of the DEC. I want her to come up and just say a few words before we begin. Come on, Jackie.
Good evening, everybody. I'm so glad to see everybody here. And I do see that we're not only from Clay County, but I see some from Duval. Would there happen to be anybody from another county, Nassau or anywhere else?
Oh,
No? Okay. Where are you from? But Duval, there you go. That's Duval, correct? I do appreciate everybody coming. I want to give a special thanks to everybody here and also to all the volunteers that helped us make this happen. As you know, these things just don't happen, overnight. And yes, Chris, we love your decorations. So if anybody comes to any of our events, you know Chris did the decorations. But I also want to do a shout out that for our Clay County Young Dems. They have a podcast called Clay County Speaks. And they did a podcast earlier with David Jolly, and they've done several podcasts. I believe this was the 22nd one. 33rd, excuse me. You just put out the 22nd, correct.
23.
I stand corrected. So the 22nd one is out there, though, that you can view it. And once Diana does a lovely job of editing it, you'll be able to see the podcast on our Facebook page and other social media. And that would be with David Jolly. So I want to give a big hand to all the volunteers that help, and they're here now and helping us out. And we're going to go forward. And without further ado, I'm going to give it back to Justine, our great MC, who helps us with all our events. Thank you.
I didn't introduce myself, did I? Okay, so my name is Justine, and I'll be moderating tonight's event. But with that being said, this is not about me. This is about David Jolly. So I would love to bring you up and have you speak, say some words. Please. Woo. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, thank you all. How are we doing tonight?
Yeah.
Hey. Hey, it's great to be with you. I sincerely mean this. Thank you for coming out. Some of us we've met before. I think it was a year ago or more. We were in Nocatee, and we've done Clay County events in the past. We've been in Levy and Lafayette and Putnam, and we've been in, yes, Broward and Miami-Dade and Palm Beach and everywhere else. I shared with someone we're doing what Lawton Childs did. We're just driving, not walking. I also want to comment, it's fascinating the number of people who have said, hey, I saw you on MSNBC. And I got to admit, when I'm in parts of the state like we are tonight, I'm surprised you get MSNBC in the part of the state. So, so thank you for being a regular viewer. I appreciate it. Thank you for being part of the viewing family. Look, let me share. Let me do a couple things, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Let me share with you a little bit of an introduction, I suppose. I don't want to take for granted that anybody knows who I am here tonight. Secondly, let me share with you the values of our campaign. Values more so than policies, because I think the policies flow from the set of values. And I do think tonight that we are a nation that is broken. We are in crisis, and we are more divided than ever before, because we have gotten away from the basic values in government. I'm not talking about personal values, the values that have made America strong, we have gotten away from. So I want to share with you the values of this campaign, values I believe that are at the core of who we are as a people. And then very briefly, I want to share with you how we win, because we're going to win this race in November, folks. We're going to win this race. We We, all of us, not the Jolly campaign, the entire state, we as a new coalition in American politics are going to defy history and do something that hasn't been done in a generation. That's going to happen this November. So a little bit more of an introduction. My wife and I live down in Pinellas County. The beach is outside of Tampa. We have 2 young kids. They're 7 and 5, 7 and 5. Yep. And I'll save you the Google. I'm 53. I'm 53. And every day's a Monday. And if you felt a little earthquake last night, it's because their plane landed from Grandma and Grandpa's from Pennsylvania back home, and they are now in state. And watch out, because we got 90 days of a campaign where they measure this entire experience based on whether the hotel has a lazy river. And fortunately, in a state with a tourist economy that we have, there are a lot of lazy rivers across the state of Florida. But as you know, anybody with kids or grandkids or special children in your life, you know, every day is about the opportunities we can create for them, protecting them and providing them with opportunities. It is a very special, precious chapter for my wife and I to have 2 kids that age. I was born in Pinellas. My father was a minister. I speak openly about my Christian faith. I think it's important that we have candidates willing to speak of their faith. I do it not to evangelize, but to share a little bit more of who I am, right? I mentioned I'm married. We have 2 kids. I was in Congress. I'm an attorney. And yes, I'm a practicing Christian that believes deeply in the personal faith that I hold to. But I also know, particularly in a state that launched culture wars based on the foundations and perversion, I believe too often, of religion, that we need a governor who understands their personal and private faith stops at the steps to the State House. Listen, for people of faith, whatever faith that is, that doesn't weaken our faith. It strengthens your faith, and it protects the constitutional order and the responsibilities of government to ensure the greatest amount of liberty for the most number of people. Those 2 principles aren't in conflict. In fact, they're married together. The celebration of individual freedom, whether that's religious freedom, reproductive freedom, the ability to speak out, to assemble at a No Kings rally, all of that practicing of personal freedom is what the great American experiment was founded upon. So we lived in Miami for 10 or 12 years. As I mentioned, my father was a minister. We moved around, so grew up in Miami during some critical times in Miami history, the Mariel boat lift, some of the city riots, a time when it went from an old agrarian city to an international city with a confluence where our church went from a traditional English-speaking single-service church on a Sunday to all of a sudden 4, 5, 6 multi-language, multicultural services. I then moved back up to Dade City, Pasco County. For those of you who know Pasco County before the internet and cable TV, it was a little off the edge of the earth a little bit. I went back into a footloose small town, then lived in Pensacola. I've had the opportunity to live all over the state. As I mentioned, a 5th generation Floridian, we care deeply about this state. But still today, given the trajectory of this state, the economic crisis we face in a state that has launched culture wars that every day seek to divide our communities, as responsible parents, yes, my wife and I wonder if we should raise our kids in the state of Florida. And I know my opponent has a lot of fun with this. They say, oh, Jolly, he's not committed to Florida. During COVID, he took his 1-year-old daughter out of Florida to Pennsylvania. Yes, you know why? Because I care about the safety and security of my child in a state that denied public health and denied science. Yes, as a parent of a 7 and 5-year-old in a state that has abandoned public education, I worry about where to educate my daughter and my son in the state of Florida. And in a state that launched culture wars, I want my children to know that absolutely everybody deserves to have their rights protected and their dignity celebrated, regardless of the color of your skin, where you were born, who you love, or who you worship, because I'm a responsible parent, not because I'm a politician. There is a crisis in our identity right now. What are the values that we have wandered away from? The values are very simple. I was a Republican when I was in Congress, a bit of a Bush 41 Republican. I was explaining on the podcast. Given our age difference, I had to explain who Bush 41 was. Congratulations on your youth. I came up in a Tea Party era, fighting the Tea Party, fought the Freedom Caucus, fought Trumpism, and I lost all those battles. And as I told Bill Maher, I want my kids to know that I stayed and I fought, but I want them to also know that at times there are fights you walk away from. But there are values that I tried to exercise as a Republican. I then spent 5 or 6 years as an independent untethered from major party dogma and reflex. And then I moved into the Democratic Party, not to try to change the party, but because I saw the values I was trying to exercise in today's Democratic Party. 3 values that I talk about. First, the economy should work for everyone. The economy should work for everyone, a very basic value. What has created the greatest strength of American society is that, particularly since World War II, we have made responsible social investments in the greatest amount of economic opportunity and economic mobility for the most number of people. And we have congratulated success, and we should continue to encourage and congratulate success. You see, we don't have to fight the haves to fight for the have-nots. But in an era where the economy is not working for everybody, we need to recognize that. Not blindly try to convince people not to feel what they're actually feeling. Half of the state tonight does not have enough savings to last 2 weeks. Working class individuals without enough savings to absorb a car repair, a lost job, a broken relationship, a home repair. More people are going without health care than ever before in the state of Florida. And in a state that abandoned public education, families don't know where to educate their kids. The economy is not working for everybody. Homeowners insurance, car insurance, the cost of gas, the cost of food. People are working harder than ever before and falling behind, and that's true. What used to be celebrated as the gig economy providing flexibility now just means you have 6 jobs with no benefits and you're falling behind. The economy is not working for everybody. It's a value. The economy should be working for everybody. And so the second value is a corollary to that. Government can do a little bit better in making investments in people's personal economic opportunity. We should always look to the private sector first. Government should be lean and efficient. But since World War II, part of what has created the greatest amount of economic strength and economic mobility is we have determined to invest in the basic pillars of people's personal economy: housing, healthcare, education, frankly, an interstate highway system that created the greatest amount of geographic and economic mobility that we've seen. You see, there are certain things the private sector will never do. A for-profit education system is never going to make sure that every child gets educated. They're going to make sure that the most profitable child gets educated. A for-profit healthcare system is not going to make sure that the uncompensated care is provided to the person who really needs it. They're going to make sure that the patient they can make a profit off of gets compensated. This is not the fault of the private sector, folks. That's why it exists. But the reason society has determined to make investments is to make sure that people have the opportunity to access safe housing, to make sure they have the opportunity to have a quality education, that yes, they can be provided health care when they need it. And in an era where we have attacked those responsible social investments, that second value is simple. Government can be smarter in our investments in housing, healthcare, education, clean water, clean air, safe communities, transportation, the basics of a strong society. Yes, we have a homeowners insurance market that has collapsed and it's not coming back. If the private sector could solve it, it would have, but it hasn't and it won't. We need a state catastrophic fund in the state of Florida to reduce homeowners insurance by 50, 60, sometimes 70%. Recognize that climate science is real. And that states like Florida will never have an affordable coverage option in the private sector for hurricanes and wind, just like California won't for fire and Tornado Alley won't for tornadoes. We need to invest in workforce and affordable housing so people can live in the community in which they work. We need to scale up the delivery of healthcare in all 67 counties, particularly our rural healthcare deserts. You know why? Not because it's an ambitious progressive agenda, but because it saves the state money. Listen, more people are going without health care than ever before, and as a result, we're 49th in avoidable hospital costs. So whether you're a progressive that believes in extending health care or a conservative who understands we need to save taxpayer money, what we've seen from the other 40 states that expanded Medicaid is when we deliver primary health care, we improve outcomes for the individual and we reduce costs to the state. When we are a state that chose to attack and abandon public education, and it's wrong. Listen, this is a choice. This is a choice. We get wrapped up in policy debates and politics all the time, but it starts with a choice. We're a state that chose to attack public education. We chose to defund public education. We are a state today that chooses to pay our teachers dead last in the nation. And it's wrong. It's a choice, and it's the wrong choice. We are 40th in per capita spending. And guess what? My friends on the other side of the aisle in this race will point to fourth grade test scores and say, oh, but look where Florida's doing great. Congratulations. Let's chase success. Let's keep fourth grade test scores up. I'll match you that and say, what are we going to do about eighth grade test scores? Because by eighth grade, our test scores are falling off a cliff and we're heading towards the bottom in the nation. Why? Because we've abandoned investments in public education. We should be a state that leads the world in public education. Lead the world, not just Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi, God bless them, but lead India and China. Why not? It's our public taxpayer dollars. It invests in opportunities for the most number of people. It strengthens our economy. Sure, let's demand innovation and reforms within public education. Make sure it's always chasing the tip of the curve and making sure that every child has a remarkable opportunity. But that it is not the right answer to attack and abandon it and to turn to choice schools with no rules where for-profit management companies are making millions of dollars off of failing our kids. Because that's exactly what's happening in our for-profit charter school industry. So yes, the economy should work for everyone. It's not. Government can do a little better in improving people's lives. And the last value is very simple. And I don't care if you come from faith or simply subscribe to what Jefferson called the very natural rights of man. We should be a state where absolutely everyone's rights are protected and their dignity is celebrated, regardless of the color of your skin, where you were born, who you love, or who you worship. Folks, culture wars are wrong. Culture wars have victims, and we're better than this. We're better than this. Look, what does that look like? It means that every child in the state of Florida should be taught all of history, not just the favorite parts of some of our politicians. Every child in the state of Florida should know about the Rosewood Massacre. Every child should know about the Groveland Four. They should know that Harry T. Moore and his wife were murdered on Christmas Day. They should know about the Pulse nightclub massacre. They should know who Harvey Milk is before they ever step foot in the San Francisco airport and say, who was this airport actually named for? It doesn't shame us to know our history. It strengthens us. We will never, never identify the darker chapters of our present if we don't understand the darker chapters of our past. Let teachers teach. Bring back the books. Let our communities and our churches celebrate their own. Keep big government conservatism out of local control. If a community wants to paint a mural to Black Lives Matter or to the LGBTQ plus community, God bless you, I'll buy you a can of paint. Look, it also means getting the ideologues out of our higher education system and letting our state universities return to educating our kids in something called institutional autonomy. And it means in the area of public health, ignoring all of the ideological garbage we keep hearing from our current leaders and recognizing science and data and math. And yes, it means on day one, firing the Surgeon General of the state of Florida. Look, the economy should work for everyone. Government can do a little bit to improve our lives. And we should be a place where everyone's rights are protected and their dignity is celebrated. As I mentioned at the beginning, I do think we're a nation in crisis. I think we're broken, we're more divided than ever before, and every day we're told to hate on our neighbor and to distrust each other, and we're told that somehow that reflexive partisanship we're supposed to feel on election day is bigger than who we are as a people, and it's wrong. It's wrong. My wife and I often say this campaign is about something bigger than our politics. It's about believing in better. Believe that we are better than this moment in our history. Believe that we're capable of so much better. Believe that we are capable of leaving our children with so much more. That we can lead by example and demonstrate that as a people we rose above the toxic politics and partisanship that we're told every day is supposed to define who we are. How do we win this race? Listen, if the election were tonight, we would win this race. If the election were tonight, we would win this race because voters across Florida are telling us they're ready for change. In the last 2 years, we have seen special elections in Florida swing towards change by 15 to 20 points. And I say swing towards change for this reason. Yes, elections are swinging towards Democratic candidates. And I believe that's because we have been given an opportunity to demonstrate we're capable of this moment. But my caution to my Democratic friends is this. While we are winning votes, I'm not sure we have yet won hearts and minds. Let's be very, very sober about this. We are being given a very fragile currency. In a moment when the nation is broken and people are looking for change, they're turning to Democrats and saying, could we trust you to try to pull us out of this? And they have continued to show up at the ballot box. Our congressional special election swung by 15, 16 points towards Democratic candidates. Our state legislative races by 15, 20, 25 points. Folks, Mar-a-Lago just elected a Democratic state representative to elect the president of the United States. Hillsborough County just replaced the Republican Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins' Senate seat with a Democratic state senator. The city of Miami just elected a Democratic mayor for the first time in 30 years. And it wasn't even close. It was 19 points. Folks, we're gaining ground in the villages. The villages. You're going to have a billboard in Clay County for the first time in a long time, I hear. Right? We've got canvassers and door knockers all across this state because people know this is a moment bigger than our party. And so I will close with this. I opened by speaking about my kids. Some of you have heard this story, and I promise tonight I'm going to do it without choking up because sometimes it gets me, but I can push through this one tonight. Our daughter, she's the one, by the way, I'm amazed 2 kids can come from the same womb and be so wildly different. Our daughter, I say she's going to be just fine in life. We're going to set up the guardrail. She's going to ping pong off them, and boom, she's gone. She'll be governor before I am at this rate. Our little son, Teddy, he's never leaving the house. In fact, he told my wife he wants to be a stay-at-home dad. But at 5, he meant our home. He wants my wife to raise his kids. God bless the partner that Teddy finds in life. Watch out for that young person. But look, sometime around October, so we've been on the trail now for a year and a half. So we've been on for 6 months or so. And you know, I would try to rush home and make it home to read to the kids before bed or be there when they wake up. You know, a child's life moves so quickly and they just want their mom and dad home. And so I was reading to her one night. My daughter just started crying and she said, Dad, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't run for governor. And 2 things captured me in that moment. The first was a young girl who just wanted her dad home, right? We get it. We understand that. It's not just politics that can take a parent away. There are a lot of kids who have to deal with those challenges, particularly in broken homes, wondering if mom or dad's going to be there in the morning. I get it. That was our little daughter saying, Dad, please don't be on the road so much. But the second part was a raw indictment of who we are right now. A young girl who looks at politics and says it's toxic and it's nasty and it's mean and it's divisive. And all I see in politicians are people who are screaming at each other and screaming at us and telling us we should hate each other. Dad, don't do this. Don't be a part of politics. It's ugly. It's mean. I thought about when I was her age, I was watching the Carter, Reagan, Anderson presidential election. I didn't know what to think about it, but I saw it aspirationally, this great civic experiment. I wondered what my parents were going to do. I knew not to ask them about their vote, but I was watching them. I wondered about my teachers, my classmates. I was living through a presidential election as a young child, experiencing the greatness of America. And today, a young child looks at politics and says it's nasty and it's mean. Stay out of it. Don't be a part of it, because a young child knows that we're broken. We're broken. And so I said to my daughter in that moment, and I believe in providence, the words that were laid on my heart, I said, sweetheart, when you have a chance to change the world, you take it. You take it. We don't know what's been ordained. We don't know how it turns out. But we know in a moment when we're broken, when we're in crisis, that we all have to do what's within reach. And so, yes, for some, it means being a candidate, standing for office this cycle. God bless all the candidates in this race and down ballot and everywhere else who are willing to stand up for election tonight. But it also means participating in events like this. It means going on social media saying, hey, I think you should look at this campaign. It means funding a billboard. It means canvassing. It means checking voter registration. It means doing the get out the vote, whatever it is. It's the No Kings rally. It is the participation in a civic obligation in a moment of crisis where we peacefully get to decide our future. This is it, folks. This is bigger than politics. I was talking to a former Republican U.S. Senator recently, and he said to me, I'm never leaving the Republican Party, but this cycle, I'm going to vote for every Democrat on the ballot. And then he said, unless you give me a reason not to. And what he meant was just litigate our national identity, litigate who we are, litigate in this moment that, yes, indeed, we are better than where we are and who we are right now. That's what's brought us together tonight. That's what's going to get us through November. And that's why, as a state, we are going to be on the right side of victory and the right side of history in November. Thank you for being a part of this tonight.
All right. So at this time, I want to thank you sincerely for coming out. We're a small county. I know you could be anywhere else, but you're here with us. So it means a lot. But it's time for you guys to ask questions. So Mr. Chris here and Miss Diana will be going around. If you want to ask a question, please just raise your hand and they'll make their way to you.
Mad.
You're fine. We have somebody on this side.
What? I think this is mad.
On that
Okay.
side. It was the young lady with the floral back there first, and then you can come through.
I don't know exactly how to put this, but like I've been seeing on TV. Is it working?
I don't think this one's on.
Press the button.
Oh, there's a button.
Oh, Lord.
Turn it sideways.
Okay.
There you go.
There
I've
we
been
go.
watching TV and looking at the ads, and I've seen ads from Brian McDonald, the one that's
There you
running
go.
against you in the Republican side, and I haven't seen any with you, David Dolly.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering about, the money and that's going to the Republican and the Trump backing and all of that.
Sure.
And how are we going to rise above that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, here's the good news. I think he's spent about $40 million, and it must not have helped his name recognition if we're calling him Brian McDonald tonight. No, I mean this with absolute respect. I also know this, the more money that Byron spends, the softer his numbers get, because sometimes there are politicians that the more you get to know them, the less you like them.
Mhm.
And the more you get to know about them, the further away you get. Let's understand first about where his money came from. He's raised over $100 million, and it's not charity. It's not charity. And I'll give him a little bit of grace here. Let's take him out of this as Byron Donalds or Brian McDonald. And let's just make it about a broken, corrupt campaign finance system where the same people who have owned the last 30 years in policymaking in Florida have bought the next 4 by choosing their horse in Byron Donalds. That $100 million has come from private equity, from big utilities, from big tech data that wants to build data centers in your backyard, from the for-profit education system and every other industry that has controlled the fates of Florida. I personally am for the public financing of campaigns, and I believe that even before this race. The reality is we're not on the air because we're having to be stewards of much more limited funds than Byron Donalds has. The president's endorsed him, the money has unlocked for him, and the people believe that they've chosen their horse so that they can control the state. Some of those folks recently came to me and said, hey, can we meet? And I said, you can send me a briefing paper, but I don't think we need to meet, because you already put your $5 million down on somebody. And I don't need you to come to me trying to make up because now the race is tight. We're going to make policy decisions without the influence of the $5 million and $10 donors. But to win an election, we need to reach voters. So the good news is we've got a small dollar campaign where if you look at the way the state public matching system works, We've doubled or tripled the amount of public matching funds that our campaigns received against Byron Donalds. Because ours is funded, I think the average donation might be $30. It's, the state matches any donation of $250 or less. So to each one of you who have helped us out, thank you, because your funds have likely been matched in this race. But here's how we have to reach voters. We will raise the resources to be on the air. You haven't seen it yet because we haven't needed to, but we're going to need to. To get there, we're going to have to keep raising more money. But the other way to reach voters doesn't cost anything. It's the canvassing, the knocking on doors, and the phone banking. And, on high attendance Sundays in church, it's called Each One Reach One. Whether it's church or politics, a campaign is about each one reaching one. This is what is so important about the work that many of you put in canvassing and door knocking and sign waving and putting a sign in your yard. We have got to reach voters. Where we can do that without expending a dime, but we all give of our time and our efforts, that's the most effective way to do it. Where we do it on TV or in your mailbox, we'll do that as well. We're going to get outspent. We're going to get outspent. For those of you who watch MSNBC, you know a guy named John Heilman. Heilman often tells me, stop being an analyst and start being a candidate. I'm going to be an analyst for just a minute. For my wife and I to get in the race a year and a half ago, we would not have decided to do that if I did not believe as an analyst that we could win this cycle. Meaning, I was not going to, as a parent, put our family and our children through this. Neither was my wife willing to do that. This is not about a vanity run where I was hoping to land on TV. I left TV to do this. I've been out of politics for 10 years. I said I've been out long enough to tell the truth. But as an analyst, I'll tell you, we have an opportunity to win this race because the cycle is presenting the opportunities. It's the 6th year of a presidency. People are exhausted by the corruption. They feel the economic hurt. They're looking at the incumbent politicians saying, I don't think I trust you to dig us out of this. And so we're seeing this massive change environment. In a change environment, we don't have to have the same amount of money that Byron has, right? Byron can keep spending and his numbers get softer. But we have to have enough money and manpower and woman power to reach voters. And so that is where we need the county committees, we need the volunteers, we need the civic engagement. If all you can do is sit at home and get on social media and make sure your friends know, if you make sure your friends know that there's a governor's race and there's this guy named Jolly, then you've done your part tonight. If you can give $5 or $10, great, we need that.
And over.
We're going right over here.
So first, I want to say that I can definitely relate and connect with everything that you spoke about, but I'd like to hear more about your thoughts on immigration. Not just those who are undocumented, but those who are here with green cards and visas are still being attacked.
Yeah. You know what? I mentioned I was a Republican. I was an independent. Today I'm a Democrat. I don't litigate the left-right spectrum. But this is an area where I get to tell you, where I am on immigration? Exactly where Marco Rubio was, and exactly where Ronald Reagan was, and exactly where George Bush was. People like to say, oh, Jolly, he changed. Well, on this issue, I don't think I changed that much. I think the other side of the aisle has gone through a dramatic change. Because you see, let's start with the values and then talk policy. I think we are a nation that is richer and stronger because of the economic and cultural contributions of our immigrant community. And yes, that includes those who are here today without documentation. I grew up during the Mariel boat lifts, as I mentioned, in Miami. But in Miami, during the Mariel boat lift, we rounded up Cuban refugees and we put them in the Orange Bowl, our football stadium, behind a chain link fence. Families came down and stuck their hands through the chain link fence, passing notes, trying to identify cousins, uncles, aunts. Bob Graham, Jimmy Carter, Mayor Ferrer of Miami were trying to figure out, what do we do in this moment, right? Not too unlike some of these other chapters we're living through right now. Jimmy Carter and Bob Graham, there was a moment where they were unwilling to commit one direction or another. They later got a lot right. But Mayor Ferrer in that moment stepped out in front of the microphone and said to the world, if we're unwilling to welcome the refugee, we might as well throw the Statue of Liberty into the East River.
Clock it.
It's a value. It's a value. It's who we are. And someone mentioned Nicole Wallace. Several people mentioned Nicole Wallace. This came up on her show one day, and I said to Nicole, hey, can we go to school for just a minute on some history? She said, yeah, I'd love it. Let's do it. I said, you know that I think it's called the Great Colossus, the sonnet that's on the Statue of Liberty. We all know one line. One line. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. The other lines provide the context for that one line that we carry throughout life. The line ahead of that says, keep, O distant lands, your story pump, meaning old world nations, old world, old Europe, keep your rich, your famous, your fabulous, your most successful, keep them. Send me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. The next line, you're homeless, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Behold, I lift my lamp by the golden door. Values. And from those values flow policy. We are a nation strong enough to welcome the refugee, to welcome the migrant, to accept and encourage their contributions to our economy and to our culture. And I'll tell you this, what this governor and the president have gotten away with for too long is conflating crime with a community. You see, there's a higher propensity of violent and property crimes in native-born American communities tonight than in our immigrant communities. But to hear Ron DeSantis and Byron Donalds talk about it, you'd think the greatest fear we should have is the undocumented immigrant in the state of Florida, and it's wrong. Now, what does that mean? Let's first commit to being tough on crime. We should be tough on crime as a state. That means if you were born here, if you immigrated here, or if you're a politician who steals $10 million from the Medicaid program, you should be investigated and held accountable. Because corruption is corruption, grift is grift, graft is graft, and crimes are crimes. So yes, we will be tough on crime. If you immigrated here or if you were born here, if you commit a crime, you'll be held accountable. But the greatest threat we face is not the undocumented father who's shown up at the job site every day for 12 years to earn a living, to put food on his table so his kids can learn English and pursue the American dream, just like Marco Rubio used to believe. That person deserves a pathway to legal status and a pathway to work status. Byron Donalds is going to scream amnesty. Garbage. It's garbage. We're a nation made stronger because of the economy that our immigrants commit to and contribute to every day. If someone commits a crime, a property or violent crime, yes, they'll be arrested, but that doesn't matter where they were born. That just means creating a safe community. But the immigrant community has contributed to our society and will continue to do so and should be encouraged to do so.
Oh, hi. Thanks for coming. I think the elephant in the room is Amendment 3, property taxes. And it's kind of absurd that the current governor set this up just as he's leaving. I'd
Yeah.
like to hear your thoughts on that.
And now he won't campaign for it. I was sharing on the podcast, John Boehner used to say, don't worry, the math will work out in 30 or 40 years. No, Mr. Speaker, it never does, and it didn't, and it won't. Look, I think we should move towards property tax relief. I'm afraid the math doesn't work in this one. And the only hesitation you hear in my voice is I think it's prudent for us to wait until the courts approve the final language before I, as someone asking to lead the state, give a responsible yes or no on the amendment language. I mean that to be prudent. I'm not hiding from it. I'll be happy to share my thoughts. Right now, I find myself in the same camp as our firefighters, as our law enforcement officers, and as our local elected officials who say, hold on now, we're going to hurt critical services in our community. Even Republicans now can't justify what they've done. The governor won't campaign for it. The court says it doesn't make any sense. It's overtly political. And our Republican Senate leaders are arguing about what it actually means. Mm-hmm. Is it 100,000, 250,000? Is it permanent? Is it automatic? We don't actually know what it means, which means this is rushed. So the two questions I say is, should this pass? The first important question for the state, for voters in November is this: who do you trust to clean up the mess, Byron Donalds or David Jolly? Because we're going to have a mess. We're going to have a mess. And then the second part is where I think we might want to move this conversation if we have to revisit this. First, in that very first session, we're going to have to identify an emergency fund for our rural and least funded counties. That is real. Look, a $250,000 homestead exemption eliminates almost $500 million in funding from Miami-Dade. Mayor Cava has a lot of concerns about that, but could Miami-Dade survive? Yeah, probably so, but there's going to be a lot of heartburn. But if you move into a Levy or a Lafayette or a Putnam, frankly, a Clay, a $250,000 homestead exemption could devastate a local community. And I think what it reflects is something that I've started to call big government conservatism, which is Tallahassee thinks as long as they make the decision that it's advancing the cause. I actually still subscribe to something I signed up for when I was a Republican, which is local control. Local control. And so I say that because where do I think we might want to move this conversation? If you consider the disparity in property values across the state, go back 100 years, the greatest disparity between, say, Palm Beach and Clay may have been 2-to-1 in property values. But now we're in an era where sometimes that gets as high as 6-to-1, 7-to-1, 8-to-1. So you end up in a situation where 250,000 homestead exemption in Palm Beach means one thing, but in Clay, it means something totally different. So I do wonder if the state should consider a conversation about local control of exemptions. Consider this. We trust the local county and community to determine taxing and millage, and we trust them to determine spending. But in between there, we have the state step in with a statewide homestead exemption. We should keep homestead exemptions. We don't need to eliminate any homestead exemptions, but maybe those homestead exemptions should be determined at the local level that's also determining taxing and spending. Clay could determine if it's 50 or 100 or 200. Palm Beach could determine if it's 50 or 100 or 250, could determine where they make up that lost revenue. But right now, the big government conservatism in Tallahassee is going to shift that tax burden somewhere, either onto a reduction in services, onto our rental community that currently faces a significant affordability crisis, onto commercial properties. Somewhere, math is math, and I'm just afraid my Republican friends in Tallahassee have forgotten what they learned in grade school, that math is math. So we'll see. I imagine I will end up shoulder to shoulder with our firefighters and our law enforcement officers on this one.
We have one over here.
Thank you. You spoke recently at the Florida LGBTQ Democratic Caucus. You had a fantastic response. You earned the endorsement. So I would ask you what you will do as governor of Florida to reverse the harms that have been inflicted upon the LGBTQ community, specifically transgender people who have been under attack in Florida for the past several years.
Yeah, thank you for that. First, it includes including in the governor's office someone that can represent the LGBTQ plus community, either as an ombudsman or a policy advisor, to understand that part of the civil rights era we're living through continues to be pushing for equality and equity for everybody, regardless of the color of your skin, who you love, or who you worship. These are real. I say the culture wars weren't launched because the churches that I go to, their picnics started getting too big. Culture wars weren't launched because St. Patty's Day parades got too big. The culture wars in Florida were launched because the LGBTQ plus community and Black and brown communities found a greater voice and greater political influence. And too many of our incumbent politicians felt threatened by that. And they launched culture wars. And they did so with an implicit bias that somehow who you love is a matter of political discussion as opposed to private love. They didn't attack our teachers because of a photo of a traditional marriage. They attacked our teachers because of a photo on a desk of a same-sex marriage. And it's wrong.
But gay and trans are different.
I know. I'm
Gay and who you love, not gender identity.
I'm
And the attacks on trans people.
I know, and I'm getting there. You betcha. I'm not avoiding it at all. I know the phones are recording and everybody wants to send this back to the Donalds camp as soon as they can get it. Because you see, when you're winning the race, the White House and Byron Donald spends 10 days attacking you on trans issues, trying to change the state conversation because they think that punching down at a trans kid somehow is going to lower your insurance costs. And it's absurd and it's stupid and it should offend the entire state. We have an economic crisis. They want to make this race about trans, and I'm willing to have a conversation about where the state got it wrong. And I'm going to tell you a personal story. It's okay to accept as a society that some issues emerge that are new and confront our senses, our sensibilities, constitutional questions, and questions of freedom. It's okay to recognize, as Joe Biden did, that he may not understand all the challenges facing the trans community. He may not understand the journey of a trans person, but he's the first person willing to stand up and defend someone from a bully. and to fight for someone's dignity and for their rights. So put me in the camp of someone who had been an advocate for the LGBTQ community for a long time. I supported marriage equality as a libertarian Republican long before most Democrats did, before President Obama and others. It had been a hill I was willing to fight on, along with 2 other Republicans in the entire Congress at the time. So emerges the public conversation around trans. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I'm stubborn and I can be a little cheap. And so one day I was up on top of our pool cage trying to fix the screen myself, doing something I absurdly should never have done by myself. I took my phone up there in case I fell and needed to call 911. And my phone rings. And the last thing I should have done is look at my phone ringing. But what catches my eye is a phone call from someone that I hadn't spoken to in about 15 years. I've told this story on TV, and Byron's using it against me right now. So I think it's worth sharing to the whole room tonight. It was somebody I hadn't talked to in 15 years. To be honest, I didn't know if he was still alive. And he said, I'm calling you because you have a voice in media, and I need anybody with a voice to hear my story. He said, we have a grandchild who I believe was 15 or 16 at the time and is receiving gender-affirming care. And this grandfather said, I don't fully understand it, but let me share with you my story. The child went through suicidal ideations, went through runaway, went through concerns of self-harm. The family didn't know what to do. The family didn't ask for this either. Somehow we skip over the fact that for many, there's this monolithic group of people who are celebrating their trans identity, which for some people, it's not a journey they would have chosen, but they are on a journey they know that is right for them. And this grandfather said, we finally got the care for the child. And as a result, we were able to address the suicidal ideations. We were able to address the runaway. We got the child to a place where they were now embraced by friends and their community. Their grades had improved in schools. They were, I believe, on the cusp of being the salutatorian in their class, in places of leadership, one of the most popular kids in the school, college bound. And he said, the problem with what the state of Florida is about to do with this new law is if the doctor continues to provide the care, the doctor could be arrested. The child could be removed from our home. And as a grandfather, I would move the child out of state and provide for their care wherever I can get it. But I'll be removing them from the safe community and putting them in a place where I fear the runaways will start again, the suicidal ideations, the bullying, and it will destroy this child's life. Now, I don't have to understand the gender identity, the medical issues, the complexities clinically of any of it. I tried to, but I don't have to understand that to understand a fundamental truth. The last person in this entire world that grandfather and those parents need sitting on the foot of their bed as they're having these conversations is Byron Donalds. The last person they need is David Jolly. The last person they need is Ron DeSantis. The last person they need is a politician. They need to have the privacy of their own home, the counsel of their own family. If they seek counsel from a physician or a faith leader, God bless them. You see, I still subscribe to the old school Republican principle that government should stay out of your life. Stay out of your personal business. Stay out of your medical business. As a father, I don't know what I would do. And let's just be honest. I know I'm taking some license in this room, and I apologize if some of the words sound coarse. But for 10 days, about every 2 hours, Byron Donalds in the White House and his whole camp, and all these nasty, vile people online are coming at me every 2 hours saying, Jolly believes in genital mutilation. That's the words they use. I don't know what I would do as a parent. I know the families I've spoken to, there have been a few others that have come my way, not politically, but friends of friends, families that you wouldn't even know that are facing some of these issues. The first thing they say is, I didn't ask for this. I don't understand it. We're seeking counsel. We're trying to get it right. We don't have to understand it to understand that the freedom and liberty that family deserves is the reason we created this government in the first place. Byron Donalds calls me a lot of names. Radical, socialist, trans. It's one of the ugliest chapters in our politics and one of the ugliest things a politician can do, which is to manipulate, and humiliate the identity of a young person. For the sake of getting elected governor of the state of Florida, it's ugly and it's wrong. And it's why I say we're trying to believe in something better than this moment. Look, they're going to do this every day for the next 90 days because it's the only trick they know. Because they're losing this race because the economy is getting away from people and people are exhausted by the culture wars. And it's shameful that it's going to work even an ounce. They're not litigating freedom. They're just insulting us as a people when politicians on the other side of the aisle are dragging us into this space. Let's lead with personal freedom, personal liberty, and defend the dignity of everybody across this state. I apologize for preaching on that one, but it gets me a little ticked off because I think it's ugly what our politicians are doing on this issue. Yeah. And I'll keep the answers shorter, folks. It's never the number of questions, it's the length of the answers. I apologize.
Mr. Jolly, I just retired as a public school teacher this past June for 20 plus years.
Thank you.
And I have a question about teacher unions. But before I do that, I want to let you know that as a lifelong liberal, when you first came into running for governor, I was suspicious of you. And then I saw you answer a question from Nicole Wallace about Zoran Mandani. And that's when you got it.
Okay.
So I'm all for you now. But my question is this. As a social studies teacher, I have to tell you, I spent the last 3 years fending off memos, like trying to tell me what books I can't have in my classroom, what I can't say. And I always went back to the teachers union asking them, how far can I go with this? And they supported me on that. And my question to you is, will you support the teachers unions that back us up when we get all of them for stuff like that? Because there was no way I was going to teach something to my kids that wasn't true. And I was being pressured into trying to do that.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your service, your commitment. I am proud to have the endorsement of the Florida Education Association already. And I want to share with you, I actually have a plan for what I call a 10-year renaissance in public education. I won't put us to sleep with a TED Talk, but I'll give you a couple quick elements of it. But before I mention that, I also want to share with you, this opens up a conversation around leadership style. And there's a quip I use that works because it's true. It sometimes gets a laugh. I say, I don't think our current governor is the smartest person in the state. The quip is this, but your next governor is not going to be either. The difference is I realize that and Ron DeSantis doesn't. I realize that and Byron Donalds doesn't. My point is, as governor, my hope is to lead shoulder to shoulder with folks like you who are subject matter experts, right? You understand best how to educate a young person, how to empower a young person. In public health, the Surgeon General is going to understand best how to advance public health. In our state university system, in our environmental sciences, my job is to find leaders who are subject matter experts who I can empower to help lead the state, bring back adult leadership to the state. And so my plan for a 10-year renaissance in public education is this. I say this in Orlando and I look for the darts, but I think we need to look at our tourist development tax dollars to fund a 10-year renaissance in public education. And I say that because 91% of tourist tax dollars are paid for from out of state. Whether it's current tax dollars or whether we need to look at a rental car tax or something else, that's fine. Nobody's going to stop coming to Disney World because of a $2 rental car tax. They stop coming because they fear gun violence in an open carry state, or they don't feel welcome because of culture wars. But we currently require our state to use tourist dollars on more tourism, building convention centers, advertising our beaches in Chicago in January. It makes intuitive sense. I represented a beach community in Congress. Nobody's going to crimp the tourist economy. Tourism, ag, and construction are 3 main economic drivers. But, folks, we don't have a crisis of convention centers in the state of Florida. We have a crisis in teacher pay and per capita spending. And so I do think if we look at tourist development tax dollars, there's a revenue source to fund, I say, a 30% pay increase for teachers, move us into the top half nationally. Recover any failing properties. We have some great properties in our public education system. And let's not be mistaken. Still today, the greatest access to excellence in education is in our public schools, not in our private schools. That is absolutely true. And so let's chase what's working. Let's scale up what's working. And then I think the renaissance in public education also has to include an investment in secondary, tertiary services like mental health counseling, guidance counseling, food security services, and so forth, to recognize that some kids just need the stability of being in a classroom before they can ever learn. The opportunity to do that is there. And then very quickly, what I say on choice is, we'll keep choice. Choice works for some families. Choice is going to be a bit of a conversation in this race because I know the Donalds family makes their living off of our for-profit choice school industry. But I'm willing to say, maybe the first Democrat in a long time saying we'll keep choice. But I'm looking around the room. I don't see a lot of parents of first graders in this room. Maybe, I don't, grandparents, maybe, we'll see. I'm going to introduce you to something that happens in our choice schools and charter schools right now. A choice school in the state of Florida today does not have to teach a first grade kid to read. It's an absolute truth. A first grade kid who can't read, this happens all across the state, A first grade kid who can't read, the choice school gets to kick them out, send them back to public school. They don't have to provide an individual education program, special services. If your kid's college bound, they don't have to provide trigonometry in the 10th grade. They don't have to provide access to the arts or the trades. They don't have to do any of that. There's about 20 pages of rules on our choice schools. There's over 1,000 on our public schools. And they get to self-select kids. And here's the greatest grievance of all. You know, Jeb sold us on choice as a program that was going to provide economic and educational and geographic mobility for underserved communities in greatest need. Well, now because they're universal and there's no means testing, the very families choice was supposed to help can't afford it. Why? Because a choice school takes the $8,500 voucher and then charges you tuition on top of it. Which is why when we moved to universal choice, 70% of year one recipients were already enrolled in private school. We just decided to shift, to reallocate funding from public schools into private schools, even though 70% of the students were already there and not in need of the additional aid. And so we funded schools that don't have to educate or teach your kids. So what do we do about it? First, let's lead the world in public education so that families like mine have a local public school. I say more schools with more teachers who are paid more in more communities, leading the world so that every Florida family wants to rush into a public school environment, because still today it's the love and commitment and talent of teachers like yourself and educators and volunteers who are holding it all together despite the fact they've been attacked by politicians. And then in those limited areas where we have to keep choice, fine, but if you take a public dollar, you should have to provide the same services, offerings, academics, standards, credentialing, testing, be measured by the same measuring stick that our public schools are, held up in comparison to our public schools. Are you teaching kids trigonometry in 10th grade if they need it? Are you providing the IEP if the student can't read? And oh, by the way, I'll use language the other side uses a lot. Let the dollars follow the student. That means if you kick that kid out and send them back to public school, the money needs to go back to the public school, because that doesn't happen right now. If we lead the world in public education, choice becomes far less of a drain on our public schools. So let's deliver world-class public education. Working with the unions, I'd say this. Yes, what I've asked of my union friends and partners is what they should always be asked for. Let's continue to innovate. Let's lead the world with platforms of learning for the future. Let's make sure no kid gets left behind. Yes, AI is coming. Let's figure out how that can be a tool to aid teachers, not to replace teachers. Let's do all the things that allow us to lead the world in educational outcomes for the most number of people. Yes, let's innovate. But when we do that, all of a sudden, Florida's families don't need to be looking at choice schools anymore. And in the limited cases where they do, we're going to make sure that those public dollars are spent with integrity and fidelity. And it's not a fight against choice. It's a fight for Florida's kids and Florida's families.
Hi, so I have a little bit of a long-winded question.
You got it.
Both my wife and I are Florida natives. I was born about 10 minutes from here. My wife was born in Bellevue outside of Ocala. We've both been lifelong public servants. I worked for Clay County in the midst of COVID-19 in our emergency operations center, and my wife is currently a public school teacher here in Clay County. Young people in the state of Florida are finding it harder and harder every day to afford a cost of living. I'm in a privileged enough position where I own my own home and I pay $4,400 a year in property taxes, while my mother, who lives a block away from me, pays $1,200 a year.
Yeah.
3/4 of the people that I went to high school with have had to move out of the state, not because they want to, but because they can't afford to live here.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, our public school teachers here in Clay County took a $1,200 pay cut this year because of health insurance. What, as governor, will you do to improve the ability of our young families to stay here and build their homes here for those that want to?
Yeah, thank you for that. This is the story of people across the state, young people across the state. Where the economy is growing, let's keep it growing, right? I want South Florida to be the financial capital of the world. I want the urban corridors to continue to grow. Jobs, jobs, jobs. It's not just a Republican idea. Work, wages, and wealth is something that's a bedrock of the strength of the American economy. Let's keep the economy growing in the state of Florida. I hope we continue to bring industry here from other states. We should do that. We should create an economy that's growing. The challenge right now is that we're becoming the Hamptons. We're becoming the Hamptons, where those who are doing very well are doing really well and everyone else is falling further behind. And so there are a few areas that I think, and this is a real contrast in how we use government as an investor, as a lever. So let's keep the economy growing. Let's make sure that there are jobs available, whether it is, white collar professional jobs, blue collar jobs, trade jobs, mentorships, whatever it might be. Let's invest in pipelines that create higher wages for the most number of people. But when you look at housing, healthcare, we'll leave education aside for young people right now. When we were talking about the property tax relief, before the state has been faced now with the Amendment 3 framing the question, for the last year, I had been proposing something in property taxes that I would like us to consider, which is, what is the corollary to Save Our Homes, right? I believe you said your mom is paying $1,200 or a family member is paying $1,200. So a longtime homeowner benefits from Save Our Homes, right? Because 25 years ago, we decided responsible public policy required us to step in and put a cap on the rising values of home values because it was creating a burden. So we used public policy for good to do that. Now the issue is, when you buy the home from a 20-year homesteader, that new home buyer, their property tax bill jumps by 300, 400, 500%. I think we should consider first-time home buyer homestead exemption status. Meaning, is it a $250,000 homestead exemption, maybe scaled to the valuation of the property, that attaches to that first-time home buyer to rebalance that jarring inequity that allows a young person to actually own and afford a home? I do think where many of us may have benefited at times in the past, when the formulas worked, there was a federal program that allowed a home buyer of a certain income to get in at 3% down. Or if you're VA, 0% down. There are local communities in Florida right now who have started to address that with their own products. Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County have an income qualified forgivable loan product of, I believe, up to $100,000 to allow a young person or a family of limited means to enter into home ownership. When most of us in this room looking around on average purchased our first home, the average age was about 28. Now it's 40, 41 years old. Not simply because of interest rates and home valuations, but also because of taxes and because of an insurance market that has collapsed, right? Recognizing that a state catastrophic fund cuts insurance by 60 to 70%. If we're also providing property tax relief, dramatically brings down the cost of home ownership. But even for those who are unable to consider home ownership, one of the greatest economic crises right now being experienced in the state is around renters. the inability to live in communities in which they work. Two main reasons: one, rent values, and two, transportation costs. And so, one, we have failed to invest in last mile corridor public transportation, whether it is rail, whether it is bus, whether it is transit. We should accept federal money every time that money is available to invest in public transportation. We should move to rail and other mass transit multimodal platforms. But I also think we need to scale up the delivery of workforce and affordable and entry-level units in more communities. And here's the good news. My opponents will sometimes scream, oh, that's big government. Folks, they are already funding a lot of successful things. They're just unwilling to acknowledge it because they're ideologically scared to. You see, we have great models for public-private partnerships that deliver workforce and affordable housing. In Coral Gables, it's 4 units on top of a rail system with a Whole Foods that are integrated into a market rate building with about 12 units or 12 levels. In St. Pete, we passed by yesterday, it's a townhouse community that the government partnered with a private developer to deliver more affordable housing units. We have models that work, so let's scale it up. Let's have a historic investment in workforce and affordable housing because it improves the economy, not because it's a big government program. And then the last thing I'll share with you on addressing costs, particularly for young people. Look, more people are going without health care than ever before. I know some of you are in this room. If you've never gone without health care, that is a very distressing environment. And understand the number of people who it's not even a consideration today affording health care. It's a luxury that most people just assume they'll never attain. And they're just risking it. So here's the other thing. When I talk about scaling up the direct delivery of health care, sometimes the other side of the aisle says, oh, that's Mandami talk. No, folks, guess what? Here's the good news. Republicans are already funding some platforms that work. So let's scale it up. What do I mean? In Pensacola, there are federally qualified health centers that see an underserved community. The underserved community of Brownsville is being served largely by a federally qualified health center, regardless of the ability to pay. But if you can pay, there's a sliding scale where you contribute to your own health care. And it works beautifully.
Yes, it does.
In Broward County, there are county health clinics. In Little Haiti, there's a faith-based nonprofit that sees 300 patients every week with primary care, improving health outcomes and reducing costs. So this doesn't have to be an ideological fight to address rising costs for young people, creating a society that is strong enough that they want to stay in Florida, that they feel they can get a job and have a wage that allows them to grow and possibly move into home ownership and, yes, have health care. You see, all we need to do is chase what's working. And I'm willing to congratulate Republicans on their success. You see, I went to the administrator of the Little Haiti Health Clinic. I went to the administrator of the Pensacola FQHC. And I said, if we were to seed funding, could you do this in rural health deserts around the state? Could we scale this up in all 67 counties? They all said, yes, if you provide the seed funding, we'll deliver it and find matching money. So let's just do it. I think we should test universal child care, pilot it, say in 5 or 6 counties. I don't know if it will make sense. My gut tells me it will. And that young person who might be an early parent will have the opportunity to go to work and improve the economy for themselves and for society. Now, here's the way we do it. It doesn't have to be a new government program. Guess what? Republicans, independents, and Democrats around the state of Florida currently celebrate our investment in universal pre-K for 4-year-olds. So let's use the current platform and say, let's pilot in 5 counties, 3-year-old child care, 2-year-old child care. Let's measure it and see if it works. FDR is lionized as this great progressive, but he was never an ideologue. He said, if something's broken, let's try to fix it. If it works, let's keep doing it. If it doesn't, let's try something else. We can accept that Republicans currently fund some platforms that are pretty successful, so let's scale them up. I know a lot of these policy changes, particularly for young people, everything feels so far down the road to do this. And that's true. Some of these policy changes can't happen overnight. If politicians could deliver promises on day one, the Ukraine war would be over. Gas prices would be lower. We'd have an infrastructure and a healthcare plan from the federal government. But it all starts on day one to move us towards a more affordable Florida, particularly for young people. I know we're wrapping up, folks. Thank you very much for your time. I'll hand it back over.
Yeah,
to-
I actually
I think we
wanted,
have
if you
one
could
more
just get this
question.
one last question
ma'am,
and
sure.
I know you have to get out of here. Go ahead.
No, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead and ask your question.
I want to thank you for what you said about school choice here in Florida because you truly spoke the truth on
Thank
that.
you.
I'm 30, coming up on 33 years in Duval County Public Schools. But my question
Thank
is in
you.
regard to teacher unions and the fact that the state legislature has done everything that they can over the last several years to try to destroy our unions and our ability to keep our unions.
That's right.
So what is your plan to turn that around so that we can continue to work in a right to work state
Yeah.
that they are trying to destroy?
I think if we apply the new rules they put on unions to legislative elections, we catch their attention. Understand what they just did to unions. If not more than 50% of union members participate, then the election is invalidated. Well, I think for a state legislative race, if we fail to get 50% turnout, then they should invalidate the election of the state legislator. Maybe that's the way to get their attention. Look, I will tell you, I do think in a new administration, presuming historical trends are true and we will have a Republican legislature, that we're going to have to test the limits of some executive authorities. We're going to stay within the Constitution. But I do think, and I have said, we need a labor czar within the administration to help us address where we can act or by executive action, where we may need to litigate some infringement of worker rights. And then what's a package look like to get a compromise out of this legislature to bring us back to a little more empowerment. And look, I know we are a right to work state. This is not, Massachusetts, Ohio, Pennsylvania, where there's the long tradition. But there are union workers throughout the state that are keeping the lights on for us across the state tonight who are underappreciated and underpaid. And there's a reason that unions matter, because it allows them leverage and the ability to negotiate and to be represented and have their voice heard. And so, look, I think we should expect that our candidates have a working understanding of the issues, of the economic impact of some of the policies that we talk about. And so I, on this very specific issue, have continued to study and look at how do we create economic growth for the state in a way that lifts up everybody's opportunity, that empowers real wages to keep up with raw economic growth. And there are two chapters that continue to show throughout history where real wages become really accelerated and begin to exceed the cost of housing, healthcare, and the other cost of goods. And it's in two spaces. One where labor markets get exceedingly tight, and so employers have to start paying more. Honestly, we have a fairly tight labor market right now, but we have so imbalanced the rules on the playing field towards the employer class and away from employees that it then leads us to the second indicia of real wages rising throughout history. And it's when government stepped in with responsible policies to protect and empower workers. And so I do think we have to look at in Florida where the growing economic inequality is actually straining our economy, right? This is not, as I say, taking from the haves and what some would argue are the job creators. This is not about taking away from a growing economy. This is about ensuring that the economy is there for everyone, including the job creators, for our future economic growth. Look, when I mentioned becoming the Hamptons, that's real, folks. If the K-shaped economy calcifies in the state of Florida, families, arguably working middle upper class families with geographic and economic mobility, are going to leave. They're going to other states with more favorable environments to raise their family or to get a job. It strengthens our entire economy when we make sure that labor and real wages keep up with the overall economic growth. I do think in a moment of tight labor markets, we should continue the economic growth, but now we have to step in and undo some of the handcuffs that this legislature and governor has put on unions and on labor, simply for their ability to organize and do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Jolly. Can you just tell us where we can learn more about you? Where can we go and sign up to volunteer for you?
You got it. davidjolly.com is the website. And if you will give us just about another week to 10 days, we are going to begin accelerated coordination with the local DECs. Your county parties are always a great resource to get additional information, but davidjolly.com. Thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. I know you got to run out of here. Thank you. Have a good one. That being said, everybody, thank you for coming. I hope you found this to be informative. Please check out his website and learn more. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I know.